All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Hokyoji's Sunday Dharma Talk. And this beautiful spring morning, at least where I am, this morning we have the distinct pleasure and privilege to hear from our guiding teacher, Dokai Georgesen. Dokai started practicing Zen with Dainin Katagiri Roshi in 1974 and was ordained in 1984. He received transmission from Katagiri Roshi in 1989. He's the guiding teacher at Hokyoji and has resided there since 2003. And he is currently the president of the Soto Zen Buddhist Association. Good morning, Dokai.
Good morning. Thank you all. Yeah, the people I can see, I'm not talking to anyone who's not mm, outside of my usual contact list. Maybe later someone will watch this video. So I was thinking to maybe alter the kind of talk going to give because of just you five are present. Then I thought, well, maybe someone else will watch it someday. So I'll go ahead and talk about things. And I'm starting with, I'm basically going to adjust my light here. I'm essentially talking about a chapter from Harada Roshi's book, Sekkei Harada Roshi. Yeah. And it's a chapter called What is This Thing? Quote, what is, in quotes, this thing? Question mark. Question mark or quotations, this thing, which you think is yourself, is neither you nor anyone else. It is nothing whatsoever. It is the one and same with everything, everything. Therefore, this thing is a most suitable expression to describe it. The functions of seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and thinking are functions of this thing and belong neither to you nor anyone else. Our lives are constituted by the coming together of the tool-like functions of the six senses. So I'll go to another chapter where he actually talks about this. I'll read a paragraph from it. It says, everything in the world and even something as vast as the universe exists within our six sense functions. It is absolutely impossible for something to exist somewhere other than those six functions. If the ego self is forgotten, the separation between you and a certain condition or circumstance vanishes, and all things become empty. At the time, all things in the world are also forgotten. This includes the past, present, and future. In the same way, these things become empty. So, yes, I'll say one, I'll go to one other sutra too, and then there's a sutra, probably most of you have heard me talk about it before, but it's called the All, the All. And I don't have it in front of me, so I have to paraphrase. But one day the Buddha got up to speak, and sometimes I substitute the all for everything. But the title, I think, at least the title that that I've been reading lately. Glenn Wallace called it the All. And I think it's the shortest sutra I've ever read, that I've ever read. Oh, wait, no, that's not no, that was a different one. But he got in front of his assembly that day and said, "Oh, monks, listen carefully to what I say. I'm going to teach you today about everything." That's how I like to think of it. And he said, everything is sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, thinking. There's no other everything than that. And then he also went on to say, someone may purport that there's another all other than this all. But if you were to question that person, they would become vexed and confused because it would be out of the range of human experience. So I kind of really appreciate that. Because we might have other ideas of what that exists, like heaven, hell, God, things like that. But Buddha was just focused on what he could see, hear, smell, touch, and think. And he didn't look outside of that for his own liberation, for his own end of suffering or uh, unease. Just so yeah. So that's that. So yeah, I'm very moved by that sutra. Um, then Harada Roshi goes on and he says, this thing is comprised, if we specifically divide it in this way, physical body and mind and the body. The physical body is the shape, form, consists of the four elements, earth, water, fire, and air. And those, of course, in the Buddha's time. I'm not sure when it might have stopped thinking that way and get a little more specific. But in Buddhist times, those were the things that were considered the four great elements, and also I'm kind of deeply moved too that Buddha saw that, just could see that, and that's basically he used that too. That's everything. Those four elements, four great elements, and today I think we have 118 elements. Maybe some of them don't occur naturally, but in any event, so we can say the same thing about ourselves right now and the whole universe as we understand it, that it's comprised of these 118 elements. So, and so all things are made from these four basic elements. Harada Roshi says the Heart Sutra teaches that form, sensation, perception, formation, and consciousness, the five skandhas, are completely empty. Form is matter, the condition in which things are seen, the condition in which this thing sees. Sensation, perception, formation, and consciousness are mental functions and cannot be seen. The mental functions in turn arise upon stimulation of the body's six sense functions. I think you can see that the physical body and the mental functions do not work separately. So yeah, we might say there's a body and a mind, But we do need a body to have a mind, a brain, to create something we call the mind. And we need a mind to create the body. So I, um, I like that. Of the mental functions, consciousness is the one we must be most careful of. Buddhist practice and training is based on a person clearly understanding this matter of consciousness. Because it is, okay, so yes, because this is so important, I would like to elaborate on it. Important point I would like you to grasp is that the moment you perceive or think of this thing, then this thing or you exists. In the Agas, in the Nikaya Sutras, we find the following words: because this thing exists, that thing exists. If this thing does not exist, that thing does not exist. So yeah, I read somewhere, even though we have thousands and thousands of pages of teachings that have been recorded that the Buddha said, it seems like he didn't teach anything very complicated um, at all. It all comes back to the same thing, and it comes back to this thing and this statement ultimately, and really, I think it was one authorized reading that said this is the most important thing he taught: the law of causation. Because of this, there's that. If there's not this, then there's not that. Okay, by perceiving the ego self, all things come into existence. That these things come into existence is not a problem in itself. It becomes a problem because we make it one. That's a little sometimes hard to grasp. On Friday, I got some upsetting news regarding a couple of matters. And if I think now, and when I'm thinking about this, and when I think about those upsetting matters, it's hard for me to imagine I would be in some kind of state where nothing arose. I mean, nothing. Upon hearing those two or dealing with these two matters that I have to deal with, it's very hard for me to understand how you would be in a state where that just wouldn't bother me. But maybe I can. Maybe I can. Just as well, okay, this happened today. This is what's happening now. And just go ahead and deal with it as we face it. And it's not really, yeah, it's just not a, yeah, we might think of it as a problem, but all it is just another thing arising that we have to take care of right now. So, um, go to another place where Harada Roshi says, many people have a misconception concerning enlightenment. They think of it in terms of a certain experience at a particular moment. But the real essence of enlightenment is beyond compare. If there is a before and after the experience of enlightenment is not the real thing. So we can come back later and talk about that because that's very important. If I forget, someone remind me that I said. Um, So I'll read another important sutra, and so this is a translation by Gilles Fransdal, yeah, Fransdal, called "The Undefeated and Unshaken," and it's a sutra in the Majjhima Nikaya. It says, "Do not chase the past. Have no expectations for the future. The past is left behind. The future is not yet reached." So I'm bringing this up because he said, if you think there's a before and an after with the experience of enlightenment, it's not the real thing. Have no expectations for the future. The past is left behind. The future is not yet reached. Clearly see phenomena as they arise here and there. Knowing this, undefeated and unshaken, develop the mind. Ardently do what should be done today. Who knows? Death may come tomorrow. There's no bargaining with mortality and death's great army. Whoever lives thus ardent, active day and night, it is, says, is, says, whoever lives thus ardent, active day and night is, says the peaceful sage. Oh, is said to be the peaceful sage. So this is clearly what we do in Zazen, or try to do the best we can, is put aside the past and the future, and also our thinking mind. Not so altogether, not so easy to do. Even if we have a very good intention, I'm going to sit a very good period of Zazen. If we sit down, I'm going to, still, it's hard to actually manifest that. We all have that experience. So these phenomena that come into existence, Hirata Roshi says, that these things come into existence is not a problem in itself. It becomes a problem when we make it one. That is to say that before what is called I comes into existence, all things in the universe are already there. With the coming into existence, the ego self, things of the universe are perceived as objects. This perception leads to the labeling of such things as nature, mountains, rivers, trees, grass. These things of themselves are neither nature nor not nature. People have merely labeled them as such. And in doing so, we bring up a separation between ourselves and these things, and also a separation between other people. While it often seems as if these things that have been labeled by you are the cause of your confusion, in fact, it is just the opposite. To think that the cause of the problem is anywhere other than yourself is a big mistake. It is complete delusion. This is the proof of the statement that by investigating and examining yourself, all anxiety can be completely eliminated. There's no doubt about this. So I'm just going to end there for today. I've talked 19 minutes. So I'm under my time limit. Rushin, you can have some of my time next time if you don't have enough time for your talks. Anyway, I'm ready to talk about this as a group. So chime in whenever you're ready. If you want, oh, I was going to come back to something. What was it? Anyone remember?
The before and after is not enlightenment.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, I think isn't that really an interesting thing, Harada Roshi says. If you believe there's a before and after enlightenment, it's not the real thing. Therefore, what can we say? Enlightenment doesn't have a beginning or end, I suppose. You could say that. There's another, um, since Fronsdale says that the undefeated and unshaken, this was the shortest sutra I've ever read, and this one I'm sure you've heard me talk about too. And I'll just say what the title is. What is the shaken? It's not that, but I can't think of the title, and I don't have it with me. And it says, if you see the arising and the changing of an experience and its vanishing, that's called the shaken. And if you cannot see the arising of something, its change while persisting and its vanishing, that's called the unshaken. So we can call that awakening too, I think. So that's pretty profound to think about. But I think this is what Harada Roshi is pointing toward, something that doesn't have a beginning or an end. So that's probably not the way we think about enlightenment or awakening. And that's what I also believe was the Buddha's experience. I mean, through his whole life. Of course, we see Mara come up sometimes, the devil, coming up in his life sometimes. So that I think that's a representation that he wasn't without a challenge for his whole life. However, he could always meet Mara and not be swept away. That's what happens when Mara appears. But Mara does appear. The devil does appear. So that's an interesting story for us to contemplate too. Because we might think, well, after enlightenment, there won't be any problems or challenges. That's probably not true, in my opinion. Okay, that was my comment on that. So now I'll leave it all up to you to take us forward. I'm just going to sit here. I'll do Zazen until one of you starts speaking.
Could you read that last part about anxiety again,
Yeah,
please?
yeah, yeah. That's a pretty good one. Let's see if okay. I got to go back a couple of cents. Well, it often seems as if these things that have been labeled by you are the cause of your confusion. In fact, it is just the opposite. To think that the cause of the problem is anywhere other than yourself is a big mistake. It is complete delusion. This is proof of the statement that by investigating and examining yourself, all anxiety can be completely eliminated. So maybe that's, and he says, there's no doubt about this, right? There is no doubt about this, yes. So apparently in Harada Roshi's mind, there's no doubt about this. Um, uh, yeah, I can say, well, yeah, I get it too, but I'm not sure I quite understand it as deeply as Harada Roshi did. So, I mean, I could have got those pieces of information yesterday, and I can imagine reading them and it not producing any anxiety. You know, I can see where that, but it did. In my own life, it actually did. So, and I said that I couldn't imagine it not, but I can imagine it not, you know. So, was that did that speak to you? Is that the passage you were referring to, Dawson?
Yes, sir. Yeah. I don't know that I have any comment on it though. I mean, something comes up about like the um us studying a little bit when Rushin brought in Katagiri's talks on karma and
Mhm.
yeah, everything is kind of traceable back to that, which is us, our causes and conditions that we bring forth. And
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, yeah, a state where anxiety is no more. That's interesting. I like that. I like that to work towards.
Yeah. Well, speaking of karma, that was exactly what happened on Friday with these two incidents. One was the karma of my family, and they're all dead. No, everyone in my immediate family is dead. But still, this thing is arising from my family. You know, there was something in the family that wasn't done right. And so it's going to cause a big problem for me in settling my sister's estate. Um, and then the other matter is when I said, yes, I'll be the SZBA president when I did this. So karma is rising from that too. So some anxiety is produced. But, you know, after I went to sleep and I was able to get to sleep, I woke up the next morning and I thought, well, there's ways to negotiate both of these things. And maybe I could have just seen that right from the beginning, but I wasn't able to experience that. And now it produces a little anxiety, but not too much, both of those events. Not much though. So that's karma working, in a really in a broader sense than just something I did. Well, one of them I made the decision, and the other one it seems like it's really wasn't my fault at all that I'm now, but in a certain way it was in a real subtle way. Uh, the arising of this anxiety I had for the family matter. So,
It seems to me that it's just imagination that we're going to be able to not be shaken. It's more like we should really focus on dealing with being shaken and reducing the amount of shakenness
mhm.
that things shake us. But it's hard it's hard to project a non-shaken state, I think.
Mhm. We can. I I think what Harada Roshi also is saying here. Yeah, we can't. It's not a case that we should imagine what the unshaken is. These are just teachings for us, maybe to arouse our Bodhi mind or something, to our energy to practice more. But when we're practicing, we're not dreaming about. That's why he mentions about enlightenment. We're not thinking that I'm not enlightened and I someday will be. it's still about just coming into this present moment and just not imagining anything about shaken or unshaken, enlightenment or no enlightenment. So that's our practice of Zazen, which is a pretty good practice according to a lot of people from the past. It's been able to open their minds up and their bodies to realize this stuff. So they teach it. They teach, but that's not the only practice, Zazen, but it's really is a good one to help us settle down, just to designate some time each day to do that. It helps us along quite a bit.
Even that passage on the shaken, it says, notice things arising and then also notice them vanishing. And I'm not completely certain that things actually vanish.
Yeah, it's I think, yeah, I can understand what you're saying. And it's kind of a does anyone know that sutra? I've talked about it before, but I can't hit the word isn't shaken. It's just a two-line sentence. You know, there's no, the rise is not evident. I know he does that. Well, that's persistence. It's changing is not evident. This is where the unshaken is. Its arising is not evident. Its change while persisting is not evident, nor is its vanishing is not evident. I think I remember that correctly. So it's just, but it's not it's not useful for us to try to imagine what that is. It's just the only use is just to concentrate right here and now. That's what the other sutra says. Don't imagine the future because it hasn't come. So so he says, don't imagine that someday I'm going to get enlightened, or someday I'm going to understand what the unshaken is. We just concentrate on just the phenomena that's rising right now.
So Upaya is studying Vasubandhu right now through their practice period. And so Vasubandhu has these three consciousnesses, and one of them is imagination. So this imagination has multiple definitions, but basically it's that we imagine the world. We don't, whatever the world we experience is part of our imagination. But one of the teachings that was interesting to me was that of these three, there's three, I can't remember. There's imagination, and then there's something, and then there's complete. But it's like one does not have, at least the way this was presented, one does not have any greater value than the other. So this idea that we're imagining the world that we live in isn't any better or worse than having a more complete understanding.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I'm also not sure about that.
Well, that also says somewhere, I don't know if I read it, somewhere he says the comparing to, we stop comparing. And I think, I think it would be if I say something like, if we imagine, that we're not in a good state or something like that, and there'll be a better state someday, that's comparing, and contrasting. It's not complete. It's just that neither thought has any value over the other. Even I say, just like Katagiri Roshi say, you can think you're a good person, or you can think you're a bad person, but it's the same. It's the same, both ends. So, and well, I think I said not too long ago that one of the things that struck me that he said in my early 20s is if you think you're a good person, that's arrogance. If you think you're a bad person, that's arrogant too. So that really struck me, particularly when I think I was in my mid-20s, because I thought, I didn't really think, well, I knew I didn't think of myself as a good person, but I was pretty clear, I was really lacking in a lot of things, and that, it was very easy to criticize myself. And I didn't see how that could be arrogant at the time. But when he said that, it made sense to me. Yeah, all my thinking about all the bad stuff about me is just arrogance. It's just my own ego arising and evaluating, comparing, all that stuff. So that was like an awakening moment. I won't call it enlightenment, but I awakened to something at that point. But it had but I'm still maybe saying that had a beginning and an end. So it's still not the real thing. So sometimes I get an uneasy feeling when people talk about their experiences in the past, of some great an awakening experience. It makes me uneasy about just what are they really? If so, I mean, it doesn't really matter. It's like, how is it manifesting now? That's what makes me uneasy about it. Someone asked Shohaku Okamura, have you had any great awakening? And he says, not that I know of. That was another thing that really bugged me, that, I, th I think when Dogen said, I think when you become awakened, don't think that you'll necessarily be aware of it. So I thought, what?
Well, this is really interesting because, Clouds just had this 30-hour sit-a-thon for their 30th anniversary. And So-san said, she sat the whole 30 hours. I don't know how she did that. But she said that out of those 30 hours, she had like 10 minutes that she felt like she was really in the zone, right? But then the days afterwards just were so different.
Oh,
And it's like something happened,
yeah.
but she wasn't aware of what was happening.
Yeah.
So that fits with your story exactly. So.
That happens to me during sesshin, especially when I'm walking, doing kinhin outside at Hokyoji on the deck on a nice, on a day when the weather's decent. It's like you're sitting zazen, the best you can, and letting go of this and that and everything else that comes out. And then you get up and stretch, and then something, my mind just relaxes a little more. And I'm not gonna say it's awakening or whatever, but it's just something you can see more clearly. Something. I mean, it's actual. It's actual seeing. And we could say it would be seen in, it seems to me like it's seen into this, what this awakening is. I'm doing what I said you shouldn't do, talking about events in the past or doing this, but it's a little, I'm not gonna promote the idea that I'm an enlightened human being. So
I was just that brought to mind, I was going through some old papers of mine in spring cleaning, and I came across some old college papers, and I had taken this like philosophy 101, like very introductory first philosophy class in your whole life kind of thing. And I really appreciated the professor's approach because she didn't talk about the sort of greatest hits, you know, the people and so on. She would give us these little problems to kind of work through. And I think later, I never took another philosophy class, but later I recognized she was kind of setting up some of the big questions, but she didn't say that. She just kind of let us bash through them. And one of them was, can you be sure that your socks are in your dresser drawer right now? that's, you know, that's all it was. And I think that was my first existential crisis because, like, I kept, you know, how do I know they're there? Well, I put them there. Wait, that's memory, but how do I? And I see them. I can see that's sensory. What if I go blind? Are they not there? And it just, it was just awful. And I just, and at the end of it, I was just like, why am I doing this? I mean, they're there. Like, you know, why am I making this big? And I was just thinking, you know, first of all, we analyze things to death. And when you're saying, you know, the Buddha has actually said very simple things. And I think as humans, we're sort of built to grab onto something and wrestle it to the very last, you know, wrestle it to the ground. And Zazen's very different. And I just sort of think, could Buddha have been such a great teacher if he didn't wrestle a bunch of this stuff to the ground? Or can you skip that part and just go right into Zazen and do nothing? Like how important it is to look at the past and look at the future, and what does the future mean, and what is the past? I mean, you know, do we really need that agonizing step of, you know? Anyway, this is just all stuff that you're talking about. Thanks.
you know, lots of times, on many occasions, he wouldn't answer questions because he didn't think it was helpful. You know, my teaching is about teaching the end of anxiety or unease, something. Of course, we use the word suffering, but that, I like a more subtle version of it, like unease, just unease or subtle anxiety. I teach the end of ending of anxiety, and that question won't help if I make an answer to it. You know, someone said, "Will I exist after death?" He said, well, I think he said, "I don't know," but anything, but he wouldn't directly answer. Try to provide an answer because it doesn't help your life right now. Contemplate such matters. So you were reaching up to your screen to say something, Jushin, or were you unmuting yourself? Or?
I think Rushin did the opposite. He just muted himself again. And I was trying to think of, I thought maybe I might add something.
Yeah, I actually said Rushin.
Oh, did you? I thought I heard Jushin. I think I still have pool water in my ears.
Right.
I sometimes think it's a little interesting just in the development how, I don't know, I don't know quite how to express it, but how dualistic sometimes Buddhism's non-dualism is.
Yeah.
In the sense that it seems to go directly from a conscious me, I, and an outside world, and that's the opposition without, you know, let's face it, sometimes, well, I think they had intuitions, but a more modern understanding of degrees of subconscious, unconscious. I forget what they call the perio, your immediate, your brain interprets your immediate vicinity as being part of you. So, like if you pick up a pen, your brain just thinks, oh, that's a part of me now. So I always sort of come back to the idea of just these ideas about, like, you just, even if you just took you as an organism, as you, the fact that there is, again, 95% of what's going on that you are unaware of is just mind-boggling. And so when you start talking about things like the law of causation, and I always feel like the Buddha is trying to like situate us back in the world, like, yeah, you can think you have a soul or whatever that continues, but that's not the way it really is. You're not outside of all of this going on, all, the law of cause and effect. Because the simplest thing seems to be, and I'm sure most of his experience is, if we were the way we thought the way we were, Zazen would be super easy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because you're just going to say, I'm going to set the alarm for 15 minutes and I'm just going to watch my breath and I'm in control and there's a me, the little person behind the eyes, and I'm just not going to think.
Right, if it were real.
Yeah, if that were the case, it would be super simple.
Yeah, that's why Buddha says in teaching of non-self, he will say, "What do you think, monks? Is there a self?" And maybe they say no, or maybe somebody said yes. I don't know, but he said, if there were a self, wouldn't you just say, "No, I don't want to die"?
Yeah,
That would be I mean, you could just control it. What upset me the other day was because I felt I wasn't in control. Because I'm in control.
and that's where, so going back to Rushin's point, it's hard for me to imagine a state where I could have. So I mean, I can easily accept that Zazen, it's something, you kind of have to bring into your conscious awareness to say, I'm going to set aside time to do this, I'm going to do this. And I've had experiences similar to what you talk about after sesshin, where it seems like, I mean, to me, I just explain it as everything sort of calms down. You calm stuff down, and then when you go back out into the busy world, and I mentioned, like, when I go to fly home at the airport, like, the airport is just, there's no stress. It's okay, my flight is delayed, I can't do anything about it, that's okay. But if Buddha forbid, I were on the plane that were crashing, I don't know that would maintain itself. And I think we've talked about this in a couple Dharma talks a while ago, about Zen masters would probably scream. Somebody mentions it in a book. They would yell if their plane were crashing, sort of thing. But I can't imagine that it's doing something to the subconscious, and so it's hard to, because it's subconscious. How would you know?
Well, when I was contemplating this talk, I had a strong idea to talk about a chapter from Katagiri Roshi's book, Each Moment is the Universe. And there's a chapter in there called Taking Care of Expectations. And I think this story came up in the practice period. That's it's in the maybe in that book, but this is when Katagiri was a teenage boy and like 15, and he was serving in the Navy, Air Force, I think, cleaning. That was to clean and maintain the planes, but they got a siren, and in that plane was coming over and was going to drop a bomb on them, and he dived into a ditch, and he heard it coming down, and he started saying, chanting the Buddha's name, Amitabha Buddha, Amitabha Buddha, something like that. Things his parents did, and so it's kind of the same as a plane crashing. Maybe all of our expectations about what it will be like when we die, when we have to die, it will completely disappear, or they won't be the same as we expect them to be. When you were first talking, Jushin, about the where Buddhism is dualistic and talking about non-duality.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and the first thought that occurred to me is Katagiri Roshi's first book was called Returning to Silence, and then his next book was called You Have to Say Something. So I was thinking, well, maybe a person could just go around and be a teacher and not say a word. But I don't know how long, at least these days.
But except that wasn't exactly my point. So I do agree. You have to say something. But when they talk about non-dualism, they tend to talk about it very simplistically in terms of like self and other, and then there's no self and other and oneness, like one. And then they talk about. I think we say, not one, not two, which is true. Also, but it's more like. I think the more modern understanding is that it's not. There's actually degrees. There's degrees between even it's hard to say. Even in the case of dualism, and there's still degrees. It's not a simple opposition, I guess is what I'm saying. It's not because you have the conscious and the subconscious and the unconscious and your immediate vicinity environment and stuff. It's like it's more of a. It's not an immediate opposition, which does seem to be what it's set up as. Is there's the conscious me versus the world, and it's like there's steps, there's gradations.
When I hear one, not two, the two, the not two also is saying there's not even one.
Right.
Because that one would be something you're imagining in your brain as you being separate, yourself being separate in any kind of way from anything else. We're composed of the same matter, and it's just our brain that makes us think there's something different. But we have to pay attention to that sometimes, because the car coming down the road and me walking across the road are two different things. You just came, or a train coming, you said, "Oh, this is just all oneness." So it helps us for survival.
But you could never say there's one, because to say there's one, you'd have to be outside of it
Yeah.
and be back into it again. Yeah.
Right. It's the same thing as Harada Roshi says when he even says this thing. If you think this thing is a thing, then, but he's just calling it temporarily a thing, this thing. Rushin, were you going to say something? Rushin?
Yes. I think this is why Katagiri Roshi often talked about total dynamic working, is because it's just everything, including the ego, is just moving around. So when Jushin talks about all these things that are happening unconsciously, the thing I brought up in my talk, which I thought was pretty good, was I live in this house that has a furnace and a water softener and water heater and a refrigerator, and at any given point they can bring up noise, they can create noise, and this is just metaphorically, like the ripening of karma. It's like at any given point, some mechanism can pop up. And so it's like you're in the middle of this. So
Right.
then what are you going to do?
So that's a good metaphor. We're like a house with all this stuff in it. Anything can create noise anytime. We unexpectedly, or I mean, we can even set a time when it's going to create noise, like set the thermostat at a certain temperature. But anyway, yeah, that's a good metaphor, Ruth.
It gets wackier in some ways because with things like epigenetics, so people who are severely allergic to bee stings, it doesn't happen the first time they get stung by the bee. The first
Mm.
time they get stung by a bee primes it, causes the special gene expression, and then thereafter it's the second bee sting.
Oh,
And I mean, it's hard to know what you're being conditioned against, and that's sort of the thing. If it is all causes and conditions, it's all causes and conditions. There's nothing is exempt.
yeah. I don't even like to use cause.
Uh,
That I don't know, implies something caused it. But you can use it. I just like on the rising of this, there's the rising of that. I mean, it's just almost just like cells and atoms, how they're working together. I don't think, we're working any differently. What I'm thinking is created by certain atoms, molecules, cells going around, nerves, whatever. It's just, you know, because of this, there's that. And there isn't this, then there isn't that. So
but I
it's
like what Rushin said about reminding me about Katagiri Roshi saying was it dynamic action?
total dynamic working.
Total dynamic working. Because when you try to freeze things and dice them up and categorize them, that's where you sort of get into trouble. Where if you just like,
Yeah,
it's just the way,
yeah. It's just constantly changing.
yeah.
Everything constantly changing. So I'm bringing in impermanence, Rushin. So I talk. I even have to save my
And
notes in their talk
oh,
over there. It was impermanence and okay, what else? Oh, no
interdependence.
interdependence. Yes,
And you've already covered
and
you've already
happiness.
covered no self, so you're covered. But yeah, interdependence is like that. That's what it's. That's
Yeah.
no getting around it.
No. It wasn't. Oh, well, we're almost out of time.
We are almost out of time.
Why don't we end a couple minutes early? Unless anyone has a concluding comment. I don't. How about you, Dozen or Aaron? No conclusion? Okay. Well, then, I wonder if we really need to make the announcements to everyone here knows what's happening.
Well, yeah, it's true. And even for posterity, it'll be too late.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, normally we do it for posterity, but yeah, so I think we're good then. We can just close with the four vows and get on to our Easter. I don't have a bonnet.
Easter egg hunt.
No Easter egg. We do have family coming over. I hope everyone's, gonna find something. Enjoy the day. All right. Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to realize it.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.